Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy, and today on our show, we've got another amazing guest. She is an author and consultant who uses brain science and evidence-based practice to transform outdated bullying, abuse culture into happy, healthy, and more importantly, high-performing ones. Welcome to the show, Jennifer Fraser. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, David.
Oh, absolutely here. This is a very good topic and it gets polarized. But why do we say there's zero tolerance for bullying, but adult society is just rife with it and it's an epidemic among children? What's going on?
It's been a perplexing question to me for a long time. And, as you and I talked about, I think one of the important things for people to understand about our brains that we can't help and we don't know that much about is we get wired. So we get wired by our formative experiences. Our brain is this malleable plastic kind of thing. And, if
Mm-hmm.
you're a coach, let's say, or you're a parent, a sport parent, and you grew up believing that really, harsh treatment is the way to toughen up a player because they need that grit, they need that toughness, or they might even get hurt and they're not going to be a high performer and they're going to be unhappy. And so that's how your brain got wired. You didn't choose it. It's a deeply ingrained belief system that you now have sort of programmed into your brain. That's great. It's just that, when you're my age and your age, you've lived on the planet long enough to know that sometimes we get wired in ways that actually just aren't backed by any good scientific evidence. So, when I was growing up, people didn't think it was a necessary thing to put a seatbelt on their kid. And certainly not a
Right.
special, yeah, like it was just, why would you wear a seatbelt? My parents used to drive us around and we used to play in the back part of the car. We now know that that's super dangerous. So even though our brains were wired to believe it was okay, we changed our brain wiring. And all of us can do that. That's the most exciting science we have on the brain today is that it's neuroplastic. It can be changed by what we practice in the environments we're in. So we don't have to keep believing the same stuff. In my book, The Bullied Brain, I use the analogy for what I think is happening today. I use the analogy of smoking. Because again, growing up, smoking was totally normal. Everybody smoked. Your doctor smoked while he wrote you a prescription. Everybody smoked. We smoked in schools, we smoked in sports, we smoked everywhere. And so all of a sudden we learned, okay, just a second, we were told that smoking made us tough. We'd be like the Marlboro Man. We'd be out on a horse in the wilderness, super cool. And the ladies
Right.
would be like Audrey Hepburn in Hollywood with their cigarettes. And we all wired our brains to believe that smoking was good for health, it was good for fitness, and it was certainly good for toughness. It was correlated with toughness. Well, we learned from science that's not true. We learned through non invasive technology, the x ray, that our wiring was wrong. And we changed it. And the law helped us change it, culture helped us change it, marketing that shows us cancer and tumors. And, if you want to buy a pack of cigarettes, you have to look at the facts, which is that it's not going to make you tough. It's going to hurt your body. So it's going to make you sick, weak and sick. We're at the same turning point right now. We have non-invasive technology, MRI, fMRI, EEG. We have non-invasive technology that shows us that what we think is normal in adult culture, bullying, of all kinds, harassment, abuse, whatever you want to, all the different gamut. I'm going to just use the shorthand word bullying for it, but maltreatment that does not touch the body. Non-invasive technology now shows us it does physical damage to the brain. So it's time for us to change our brain wiring again.
So how does it do that? Like what are you talking about here and is showing up on these scans or in the physiology of people that point to, oh wow, this is hurting them. This is gonna cause some damage.
So I'll give you three examples. One would be the hippocampus. So the hippocampus is, for people that haven't heard that word before, it's a region in the brain engaged in learning and memory and tagging memories with emotional tags, that kind of thing. It's long-term memory, short-term memory, but it is the absolute site of remembering things and having working memory and being able to learn. So obviously, like this, critical component to the brain. When you look at it on a brain scan, it should be plush. If you're someone who's perpetually stressed and maltreated and in high anxiety and feeling humiliated and worrying, you're constantly looking for threats and deeply concerned and unhappy and ashamed of yourself because of your treatment, your hippocampus will be shriveled. It will be all crumpled up and shriveled because it's covered in cortisol receptors, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And it should be released when we need to run away from a predator, so flight, or we need to fight a predator. That's the way we're going to survive, or we need to freeze like a creature would that doesn't want to be seen. Well, that's what the cortisol is with adrenaline is helping our brain and body do. But in today's world, where 80% of maltreatment is not physical, in the workplace, if you're being maltreated, it's much more likely to be psychological maltreatment. You're still pumping cortisol up and it becomes corrosive in the brain. So that would be one region. I don't know if you want to talk about some more.
Yeah, fire away. Would there be like an increased hypervigilance in other areas of the brain where it's just now lit up like a Christmas tree and like a big giant muscle, it is just flexed all the time and is not turning off? What have you seen kind of in regards to that? These areas of the brain that once again are there for alertness, for threat, and that's the overload function for them.
Yeah, that it's such a, just the way you expressed it is so what's happening. So if we want to talk about brain regions again, and I always feel guilty doing it because, as you would know, the neuroscientists are always trying to caution us, don't talk about where, talk about, what is the implication, because the brain is a very complex network and everything's operating. But for the sake of people like myself, who I'm not a neuroscientist, I find it helpful to talk region. So for that sake, let's talk about what you just described. We could say part of the brain that gets very engaged in scanning for threats, the amygdala. And there's really interesting research on amygdala enlargement. So there's your hypervigilance. The brain resources rushing into the amygdala are being taken away from problem solving and language learning and communication and social emotional connection and creativity and innovation and skill development, if we want to talk sports. Instead of the brain doing all the things it's so great at, it's funneling its energy into vigilance. And the amygdala starts to enlarge. And so with prisoners, for example, that come from a lot of violence, they will have enlarged amygdalas because they are so used to their only way to survive is to be on hyper alert all the time. And it takes
All the
away
time.
all the time, and it takes away brain function elsewhere. So it becomes this, your brain is out of kilter in a sense.
I'm going to add one more to this because I think it's missed in a lot of research circles that they don't research it enough or talk about it. And this is going to be a little lower down in the mesencephalon or the midbrain. And it's our dopaminergic side, but it's alertness. Now, if this is always firing, it's not a good thing. People would say, oh, well, dopamine's great. But dopamine also causes heart rate, blood pressure to go up, and it inhibits autonomic function such as respiration, digestion. So, those parasympathetic side of things. And this part of the brain can become very plastic as well, and nothing inhibits it. You just have to take sensory stimulation away from it. And so, this is one way athletes or coaches can make an athlete worse off, is that they're priming the system then to have poor rest recovery, to have poor autonomic function, that the heart rate, everything is just going to be unregulated. in general terms. So, what are you seeing here? Because every athlete's different. Like, you can tell one athlete the worst insult in the world and it's going to motivate him and he's going to do really well. And then another athlete, he's just going to fall apart. So, what is kind of the combination here of these biomarkers or evidence of damage happening, and then the application of how do you communicate differently to different athletes? Or does it all have to be the same?
It's one of my favorite studies of this is a study of athlete hotbeds. So talent
Mm-hmm.
hotbeds, where you just the talent was unbelievable. So the researcher went internationally, looked at these talent hotbeds for athletes, and what they found was three critical things. And this is a kind of a roundabout way of getting to the heart of the matter with how do we talk to athletes, because what they found was the coach was critical. It can make or break an athlete how a coach treats that athlete. And as you've just
Right.
said, David, you need to change based on the athlete. Some athletes love really like directive, maybe even harsh treatment, like or harsh language or whatever. Just like get to it. Another athlete might completely have a negative reaction to that and feel exposed and not be able to take risks because they're so afraid that they might be humiliated in front of their peers. Could be anything. Now, the people that are super successful with the whole gamut of different athletes are highly empathic coaches. So just to break that down, empathy, just a reminder to everybody, empathy is when you actually aren't projecting whatever's going on for you, which is a typical bullying technique. When you are projecting onto others your issues and trying to somehow put them down to bump yourself up, whatever, it's all about you. The person that has advanced empathy, the coach that has advanced empathy or parent, they're able to really try and look for what are, like you said, biomarkers. That would be one. Facial expression, how they hold their bodies, how
Yes.
they, the pace of what they do things, looking into their eyes is a big one for in research. Looking into someone's eyes can give you a huge amount of reading around what's going on for them. That's like the site of empathy. And so empathy is when you try and figure out the person's thinking, their feeling, and their intentions. So highly empathic athletes are brilliant at reading the scene. They can read the opposition and they can figure out where they're going to go. They can read their own players. They can read the coach, and they're really good at applying that. So, a classic example of that would be Wayne Gretzky. He's famous for, he doesn't follow the puck. He follows where he knows the puck is going to go in the future. How does he do that? That's empathy. He knows what the other players are thinking, feeling, and intending, so he can anticipate and go in the direction of what's going to happen in the future. That's a brilliant example of athlete empathy. But so these coaches, they're called talent whisperers by Daniel Coyle. Talent whisperers
Okay.
are highly
I like
empathic
that term.
coaches. Isn't that cool? I know. They're,
Right.
and
Yes.
who's our best example of this? Famous for it is John Wooden. John Wooden
Yeah.
was a championship over and over and over again coach. And what he did was he changed the way he spoke to every single athlete. He met them where they needed him to be for him to kind of course correct what they were doing or see their effort or help them understand what was going wrong. And so that's a really good example. Unfortunately, we're a little bit, in our polarizing world, there's this kind of mistaken belief that if you care about athletes, then you don't care about winning. It's like, no, it's not true.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite. And losing is part of actually development and getting better. And we could maybe say that losing is detrimental then too.
Yeah. You know what? It's
But
one of my favorite phrases that whenever I'm talking to athlete people, athletics people, sports people, I always get them to understand the brain learns by making mistakes. So losing is
right.
one of the best teachers. Failure is one of the best teachers. That's how we learn. That's how our brains learn. We should be celebrating it, not feeling bad.
But let's take that to another arena then. Because people get the athletic world. and they're behind you. Like, these are kids. Let's develop, nurture them, get them better. But now the adult side of things in this world is just, oh, it's insane. But losing in the adult world means you don't get that business project, or your company doesn't make money, or you don't get that bonus. So it's tied to something financial. It's not just win, go home, recoup. It's you've lost something. There's loss besides just points. And yeah, we could say, well, money's just points for adults. But no one's going to go, yeah, it's just points until it's something bigger like their health or their family. But in this adult world where, yeah, it really does matter, especially in the entrepreneurship side or the high stakes financial worlds. What is bullying then when it comes to, okay, well, you need to get this done? And how is this world just chaotic? And what have you seen in this side of things?
Yeah, it's a that's a complex question with a complex answer, which I'll try and do. I'll try and do it justice. I've been thinking a lot about it, and I've been researching a lot about it because this is really what my next book is about: the gaslit brain. And what I wanted to do with it is understand bullying as a form of telling lies. So let's pretend you and I worked on a project together and we were really under the gun. We're under pressure. We've got to get it done, and our stress levels, our sympathetic stress response is ramped right up. Our heart rate's up, our blood pressure's up, the cortisol's flowing, and we have a choice. We can either both be so stressed out, which we know for a fact is not a good state for the brain to be profitable or productive in. It's a fine line between kind of sympathetic stress response and parasympathetic stress response, and we think of it as a kind of seesaw. We want to be in the center of. We don't want to be super relaxed and laid back. No, we got a huge project to do. So one of the things that you can do is it's really the opposite of bullying. Bullying's not going to get us anywhere. If I start blaming and shaming you, you are not going to do your best work. Same in the reverse. If you start to blame and shame me, or we start to together blame and shame the client or our boss or whatever, we're not getting anywhere. That's not profitable and that's not productive. So what we want to do, and this is a ground, everything I say is grounded in extensive science. I'm not giving the extensive science, but it's in my books. So let me just use the one phrase, but
Right?
know it's backed by so much research. What we could do is co-regulate. Co-regulation
Okay.
is Stephen Porges's work, and it's co-regulation is human beings like other creatures, mammals, and other animals too, actually. But we are able to calm each other's systems down. So if you and I are working on a project and we're under extreme stress, that is a brilliant opportunity for us to go, okay, let us be each other's best support. Let us remind each other how smart we are, how much dedicated we are to this project, how we can't control its outcome, how we're going to do deep breathing to get our systems to calm down because they're so, physiological. Our nervous system, if we just let it go out of control, it's going to go into stress territory. We don't want that. So we're going to use our facial expressions. And I'm gonna reach out and pat you on the shoulder and say, I know you can do this, David. I believe in you and I believe in me, and we're gonna get this done. I mean, it sounds hokey. That is the difference between success and failure. And like you say, in the adult world, we don't have a lot of opportunity when it gets right down to finances and, money. Currency is the way we pay for our shelter, our food, our family, our health. Like, it's there's nothing more serious.
Now, kind of on that topic, because yeah, we go into this, okay, it's a team approach. We all have the same goal type thing, into a different world. And that's the office politics world or society politics world, where we have different agendas and everything. is them versus us type mentalities, which is rampant out there as well. How do we kind of get this across to society that it it's a goal for all of us? Is that part of it, or are we just so wired to fight each other that yeah, there is going to be the backstabbing in the office or political dialogue that we don't like or enjoy from the other side? Um, what are we doing to our brains? And then what are possible ways to transform these systems where we are team based into more of a society um, end goal to make people stronger and healthier?
I think what we're seeing in the world right now, and this is very much the gaslit brain, what we're seeing is an epic battle being fought between truth, like objective fact, and lies, alternative facts that serve an agenda. So the way I define gaslighting is very relevant to this topic, because one of the ways that you can quickly recognize you're being lied to is when someone is trying to say to you that you can't trust yourself and you can't trust their opponent. It's like, really? Don't trust your own perceptions should be a red flag for all of us. And don't trust the opponent because they are a villain is also a red flag. And it is part and parcel of the same red flag comes from these people. This group is an enemy, and they must be driven out, and they must be dehumanized. We can't have empathy for them because they are the enemy. They're in the out group. So this is a failure in empathy. And empathy is the brain's superpower. And it's the superpower in the workplace. It's the superpower in politics. It's the superpower in everything. And so when someone is telling you to stunt your empathy for a particular group, you should be on high alert that you can't trust them. And they will try to make you believe that actually you shouldn't be trusting yourself and you shouldn't have any thoughts or feelings or intentions about the outgroup. We've seen it in history. We're seeing it play out today in geopolitics. And it's deadly. It's the end of democracy. We have to remember democracy is defined by demos, the people. That means everyone has human rights. And we are at a place now in understanding that actually extends to the planet. If the planet doesn't have the same kind of rights, then we're going to destroy it. And we know that. We actually are actively destroying our planet while we speak. So we can keep pretending that's not happening and being told that our perceptions, that the temperature is rising, we're just arguing there with, a thermometer. If you want to believe the thermometer, that's science and it's subjective fact, or you can believe what someone's telling you. Don't trust science. Don't trust your perceptions. Listen to me. I will tell you how to think, feel, and intend. That should be concerning. So we've gotten into this clash of bullying that's become so normalized in I would say the last sort of decade. Bullying has become very normalized in the adult world. There's no longer, you don't listen anymore to the other side, but the other side has valuable criticism of what you're doing. You got to listen to people. If people feel disregarded and abandoned and alienated in their own country, well, you better be listening to them. That you need to get to the heart of the matter and find out and work with them, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. That's just irrelevant. When you're in charge and you're a leader, you need to hear from everybody to make reasoned, healthy, fair decisions. If you're only serving your own agenda, that's where you start to see gaslighting. People manipulate the truth, and it's correlated with psychopathology. So people who do this usually come by it honestly, but it's very dangerous for the rest of us.
Now, on that psychopathology, there is a spectrum out there, narcissist to snowflake. And those words just get tossed back and forth as insults to people and everything else. What do you think, though, is kind of the range Most people are kind of in between with some tendencies, of course, because we're human, and tribal is how we grew up for and evolved since we've been being humans. What is kind of this interaction or inner turmoil we do have too? Because we can say, oh, yeah, we need to be logical about this. But at the same time, logic for some people becomes boring. And then on the other side of things too, it's that, oh no, deep emotion. Like I love the shows where it's all about getting that narcissist, or it's all about yada yada, like the interplay of all these human dynamics and the drama that's between them. Uh, where do we go from that? Because these are instinctual human characteristics that lead to bullying or lead to letting it be okay in certain circumstances, or perpetuate these debates. Um, where are we at with knowing our own emotions and regulating that? And especially in these situations where logic, of course, leaves the brain when we're stressed out and maybe gaslit.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to tell a story. Then I will talk about the science, because the story hopefully helps make the science make more sense. Okay, so everything that you just said was what I was trying to unpack. I was like, how did this happen? And why am I pulled into this situation? So the super fast version is, there were coaches who were, I would call it abusing, but the people that I worked with and for, my higher ups, so in the workplace, my higher ups said, that's not abusing. They said, that's old school coaching. In other words, your perceptions, and this is one of the most interesting things. There's so many interesting things I've learned by looking at the brain. So that's how I try and answer the question. So when the person said to my higher up, so my boss, the person that pays my salary, says to me, basically, your perceptions are out of line here. You are trying to say a very strong negative, an offensive negative, frankly, about these people that are coaching basketball. And you're calling it abuse. And you're really like kind of crossing a line here, because what they're doing is being tough.
Right.
It's old school coaching. You don't get it. And also we can probably add quite comfortably little lady. So I was like, okay, well, fair enough. Maybe the truth lies somewhere else. Maybe the truth for me is what I'm witnessing and hearing directly is abuse, but for someone else who has a different experience and understanding, and maybe is more athletically, tuned in than I am, and more masculine, and this was men to boys. Maybe I just don't get it. Maybe my gender is kind of a stumbling block. It's making me feel, emotional, when really this is just about like hardcore, win the game toughness. So I went to the research, because I'm a trained researcher. That's what I do. I'm not going to listen to the opinion of my boss, whether he pays my salary or not. It's like, okay. So I went to the research, and what the research confirmed for me was, the type of abuse that was being delivered was creating a culture of fear and humiliation and favoritism. Those are the key defining traits of bullying. And it has nothing to do with performance. There was no desire for the team to win. In fact, they were decimating these extremely talented athletes, and they were doing things that were very non-logical. So for example, they'd put the talent on the bench, and they would play the mediocre players, they'd lose the game, and then they'd ream out the talent. So it was really, if the talent got on the court and scored a 3-pointer, they'd get thrown back on the bench and receive a tirade. Lots of homophobic slurs, like really, really out there stuff. And physical threat kind of behaviors, assault behaviors. So I went to the research. The research was very clear, whether you looked at medicine, psychology, psychiatry, and then ultimately neuroscience. The research was very clear. This is highly abusive. It's very destructive and dangerous. So this is where I got very interested in the gaslighting, being told not to trust my own perception. My own perception was wrong. I was in the wrong. Those are all classic gaslighting techniques where you accuse the other person of what you are actually doing. So and this individual my boss that I'm talking about was a liar, full on liar. So he's a liar. He gets a legal report written that says that the abuse victims, who were teenagers, were telling nasty lies. So you see, gaslighting, it's kind of funny, but it's not. It's funny in the sense that it's
Right.
so mind-bending. Your brain does not respond well to someone lying. It wasn't designed to believe in lies. So really what I did was a deep dive into the empathy. And this is where I found answers as to what was going on. Because what really threw me off, David, was this: I couldn't understand how these individuals could turn their empathy on and off. I mean, if it's a brain function, if it's neural circuitry in the brain, it's kind of out of your control, right? You can't turn it on and off. You can't be super polite and nice when you're away from the athletes, but then become kind of this highly abusive individual behind closed doors, right? You think about a pedophile. Pedophile can be the life of the party, nicest guy you've ever met, but behind closed doors, he or she, I guess, is sexually abusing children. That is a typical split. So I was like, how does that work? And I found the answer in research. What's happening is, and this makes sense to me because I've actually witnessed it firsthand and my brain was really confused. This makes sense to me. What they know, and this is pretty new research, would be my sense of things, 2000s. What they know is, and this is the most useful information to have in the workplace, the brain has two different neural circuitries for empathy. I mean, it's a massively complex. I'm giving a simple version of it, but it's very complex. It involves at least 10 regions in the brain. Two different circuits. One is cognitive and one is empathic. Now, with the psychopath, what they find is they've got fabulous cognitive empathy. It's really good. They are so smart and so charismatic and so manipulative that they can make a psychiatrist. It takes them about 30 minutes before the psychiatrist is doubting their own sense of reality and believing in the illusion of the psychopath. They're good. They're the adept ever. So let's pretend you and me are here. There's a psychopath. He can read both of us like a book. He knows everything you're thinking, feeling, and intending. Me too. And he knows what makes us tick. Everything. But here's the problem. For that guy, for that psychopath, we are objects. We are books and clocks. We are not human beings, not at all. He does not see us.
Right.
She does not see us as a human. That means he or she can do anything to us and feel nothing. And the reason they feel nothing is because when you look at their brain, they have what's called, in the olden days, we would refer to this as evil. In modern neuroscience, they refer to it as empathy erosion in the affective empathy neural circuitry. So the emotional part, so if you took and there's tons of research on this, if you took a pin, and I'm observing you even through this platform, and you started to use a pin, prick your finger and bleed, it would illuminate in my brain, because I don't have eroded empathy in the affective department of my brain, the feeling part that feels your pain. I would light up my brain in the same way that your brain would, but mine would be very muted. It would be a match, but it would be a much less activated mirror of what's going on for you. And the reason why, when you think evolution, and make sure we get back, I want to go back to the really important point you made about tribal empathy, and let's hold that thought over to the left for 1 second so we can finish this piece. So what's so interesting is what the researchers say is this is how humanity survives. And we're seeing humanity not survive very well right now. We are seeing some of the most horrifying things we've seen in decades happening right now in the world. And it's a real breakdown of our empathy, our neural circuitry that feels other people's pain, not just some people, not just the favorites. We feel the pain of everybody, and everybody who's getting blown to smithereens or starving to death or is in a prison, or we feel it because we are humans. and we don't have out groups and in groups. We just feel it. That's healthy empathy. In the affective department, we feel their pain. So this is where, I mean, it should be, as the researchers say, I'm just echoing them, parroting them. What they say is arguably the most important education is in affective empathy. Those are the neural circuits we do not want to see eroded. How do they get eroded? Usually by abuse and neglect. Now, you would know it's more complex than that. There's genetic factors, there's different things. But the bottom line is, what is the main reason that we see people lose their affective empathy, which is a superpower, and it leads to a successful, healthy, happy life? It's because of abuse and neglect. So talk about
So
it.
this is one of those things out there that one bad thing leads to another bad thing that just perpetuates that cycle and circle. And what you're doing is, and I really have to applaud you on this, is you're coming up with absolute strategies and ways to get through this stuff. And that's what I really like about the work you're doing, is that it's not just about awareness of a problem, because if we just bring up a problem, then people start saying, are debating the problem. But if we give solutions to it, people get on board. And that's what I like about what you've been doing. And you've got some amazing accolades here with the books, like Dr. Meisel, Dr. Michael Mezernick even wrote something amazing for Bullied Brain for you. And people need to go check that out. And then you've got Gaslight coming out here this fall, right?
Yeah, in November.
So where do people find out more information about yourself? Because obviously people listening know you've done your research on this, and they're like, okay, yeah, this isn't just a problem, this is solutions. So where do they find you? How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the solution is neuroplasticity. All of us can change our brains. So if we've got a problem, we can go to the brain-based level of how to fix it. So in the Bullied Brain and the Gaslit Brain too, they're available everywhere. But an easy place to get it obviously is Amazon. But I mean,
Right.
you can buy them anywhere basically. You can go to the publisher. My publisher is Prometheus Books, which is Globe and Poquo. They're an independent publishing house that's being bought up by a huge publishing house, Globe and Poquo. They're translated into Korean. They're translated into Dutch. I mean, if you want
Oh,
to read in those
wow.
languages, please go ahead. Yeah, but the Bullied Brain, I'm so thankful that you say that about solutions, because I am an educator and my goal is to help people really. And I think that there's a massive opportunity for change, like healthy, good change from a brain-based knowledge. So my whole idea is we need to create a new neuroparadigm. We need to stop being trapped in this enemy zone of, if you belong to this party with these stripes, I'm not going to listen to you and I'm going to put you down. Really? Come on. It's the 21st
Right,
century.
exactly.
It's just
Yeah.
ridiculous. But yeah, the Gaslit Brain comes out in November, and pre-sales will start
Okay.
happening relatively soon. And the Gaslit Brain is how to protect your brain. It's a prevention book. It's like, why do we let ourselves get
Ooh,
traumatized at
nice.
work? Why do we let it
Yeah.
happen? Why don't we stop it? So it teaches you how your brain creates reality. Once you know how it creates reality, you get a lot better at recognizing lies and illusions and manipulations. So that's the goal there. The Bullied Brain is for people that have been bullied and hurt and abused. It's about, okay, you've been abused, so what do you do? Well, it's got 10 action steps on how you get better. Your brain is wired to repair and recover, so get better.
I love it. And then website wise, so they can find out all your writings, your future speaking engagements, what would that be?
So my website is bullybrain.com. I'm just in the midst of getting it all updated because I've been very lazy about the website. So bullybrain.com, and that's my handle for everything. So I'm Bullied Brain on Facebook,
Perfect.
on Instagram, on Blue Sky. And also, I write a regular for people that are interested, and it's just a quick read, and it doesn't cost anything. I write a regular
Psychology
series.
Today, right?
Yeah, Psychology
Yes.
Today, and my series is called The Bullied Brain. So you can find all of my
Oh, yes.
musings on the science there.
Perfect. So definitely look up The Bullied Brain and stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.